month to domestic violence. We have our panel here.
Eady. Eady.
Eady.
I'm Ebony.
Amika. And our special guest.
And our special guest. She said we already gave her introduction, so we don't have to do it again. But everybody knows this is Miss Lorna.
Thank you for being on with us
I
today.
know,
Yes,
thank you.
definitely.
So, we really don't know how to just like dig into this. This is a very important topic to me. I know as far as out of all 5 of us, I am the only one out the 4 of us that have experienced some sort of domestic violence. So each week we would dedicate something to, in reference to domestic violence, to get into a victorious place of it, to overcome it. So that's what we're gonna do. So we kind of got some things coming up today. Lorna and I both will kind of go through some things. I know we got questions that you guys and the people that's viewing will be able to look in and ask us questions if you don't know that you're in a domestic situation or you don't know how to get out of a domestic situation. We hope that today, by us sharing our stories with you, that it will happen for you. You know, we pray that that be the best thing that happens. So, I don't know, Lorna, who want to jump in? If you want to start, I think.
No, you guys can go ahead.
We could go ahead. When we was, so I guess we'll jump back in today. I've been putting little snippets on Facebook about, you know, things that I've been through. I know statistically they said that 18 to 24 is kind of around the age of domestic violence or when it starts. But I know that my first experience with domestic violence started at like 16 years old. I was actually telling Lorna like some of the things about like we got a lot of people that say it happened to me once and I end up leaving, but I know for me it did not. It went on like even until my like mid-30s until I really got it kind of figured out. So it was a very different situation, and we both know that mostly it comes from I just want to put that bridge into people that they know that it comes from, you know, an environment that you were brought up in. My parents, everybody know that my parents was like the talk of the town because of the domestic stuff that we have, you know, watched.
Right.
And I just remember not knowing how to decipher a healthy relationship versus a not healthy relationship. And I had some nice guys that I dated in my younger years, but it's like they had to have this certain type of aggression to be with them, because if they was like, oh, you know, let's do this, and if they like did not kind of like roughen me up, it was like I don't want to be in this situation, because not because I wanted to be in this domestic situation, but that was what I knew.
Right.
And that's the thing about it. Most women that tend to go to that route have seen, in my opinion, some form of abuse that is even an attraction to that. You know what I mean?
So let me ask you this. So after you ended one relationship, is that kind of what you looked for in the next relationship? Or did you find yourself falling into that same kind of a relationship?
It was just always going into the same kind. Like it was never, it didn't click to me that the person that did not, I was not attracted to them at all. They had to have some form of roughness. Sometimes it could have been the verbal, physical, and you know that was what it had to be, because that's all that was the communication. I mean, from birth until you leave the home, that's all that you know.
So you had all those years of conditioning mentally.
Yeah,
that was
right.
That's
So that was my first experience. I was 16. It was a guy that I knew, and I originally had dated some other guys. Prior to you 16, I was, you know, virgin. You just hanging out. But it was this certain guy, like he was notorious for being an abuser. It wasn't just women, it was animals, and now that I'm older and I know the signs of it, like he used to abuse animals, he used to abuse people, women or whatever, and it's like I could not in any shape, form detach from him. Because it was something, and my friends just be like, this not right. And I just remember everybody in the whole community used to be like, this ain't right, blah, 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 blah. And I used to be like, but it felt right. And for me to see anything different, I did not understand. So that's one form of domestic abuse that I want to be the person that stands in the gap to let people know, because they be like, you know, you have a lot of people like, I wouldn't accept that, I'll leave. And you know, they be quick to say that, but it's like, you don't understand, like you said, the conditioning of that mental thing, that's all you know. You know what I mean? So And I watched my mother for years and years cover it up. I learned how to cover it up. I knew how to lie about it. I knew how to accept it. I knew how to deal with it. And I actually had put like, to the point of that it was so strong that I put on Facebook today that I remember when I moved to Minnesota that my husband had actually hit me in the ankle with a steel bat. It wasn't a wooden bat. And we were like in each other's face or whatever. And he was like, you know, making the gestures like he was gonna hit me. But like the third time he literally like hit me in that bone in my leg. And so in Chicago we don't have access to like, when you go to the hospital, somebody come in and be like, do you need help? Are you safe?
Right.
They didn't do that in Chicago. And you know, you didn't even call the police in Chicago. You just take your ass with them pretty much and just, you know, whatever. And I remember, so in Minnesota, so I had my children, and when he hit me with the steel bat, he actually broke my ankle, and I had a cast from my toe all the way to like my mid-thigh. And I never forget, now mind you, I had already been abused. This was normal, but when I came to Minnesota, there was an advocate that actually came into the room. And she was talking to me, and she was like, finally, like that was my breath of fresh air, because then she started to like educate me like, this is wrong, you need to leave, you got kids, all this stuff. And it's like, that was the first time in my life I felt like I can do this. Like, this is not right. I seen my mom go through it and my dad fight all the time. I was like, I could do this. And I remember she was talking to me and my kids was at home, and I made her, she was like, well, we're gonna go to the Harriet Tubman. You know, we don't have shelters in Chicago. We don't have no safe havens for us to go to. And she had it all set up. Like, she called the people to come in there. They came and talked to me. They took pictures, you know, whatever. But my children were at home with him. So I remember that I called him. I said, I'm leaving this relationship. I got a cast. I had crutches and everything. And he was like, if you do, I'm going to kill you and the kids. I'm going to kill the kids and myself. And when he told me that, I'm like, so first thing, you know, you jump into mother mode. And I'm like, this can't happen. You know, he can't kill my kids. So I called my mom, because I got into this frantic place to be like, what should I do? What should I do? And I remember I called my mom. I said, Mom, he has hit me with a steel bat. Like, this is getting ridiculous. I'm like, I got a cast. I was boo-hooing and crying like I need to get out this relationship. And my mom said to me, y'all don't think that y'all can work this out? And when she said that to me, something clicked into me to be like, something is wrong with this. And it took me all the way to get to Minnesota. And when she said that to me, and let me tell y'all, I didn't leave, because when he made that threat, I was in the van, and what they had did was set up, they was gonna send the police over there, have him come out, and I just got to thinking about the news, you know, thinking about would he kill himself, because of course, when we talk about the warning signs later on, the warning signs like, I'm gonna kill myself if you leave me. So that's the mental abuse that they take you through. And I remember I was in the van with the cast and my crutches, and they pulled up to the corner of the house. They was gonna have the police come and, you know, intervene and get the kids. And I said, after I talked to my mom, I'm literally not lying, I was like, I'm not gonna do it. Because in my form, this is my mother, the best advice that she's supposed to give was, you know, stick it out. So I didn't. I actually stayed. And I told the people, I was like, let me out the van. And I remember I hopped around the corner and went into the house, and we moved on from that. So, you know, and this was after, like I said, this was the first marriage of, you know, going through that, and there's super more stories, but that was a form of domestic violence. And I'm like, we have so many people that's out there that don't know. I think if we listen more and be more attentive to not, we have to think before we say stuff, because people, like I said, the main thing for me is like when people say, oh, I wouldn't accept that, I believe, and it's deeper than that, because it's just, you know, more to it.
Well, a lot of people can say that though, not having been in it, and not that I want anybody to be in it, but a lot of people say that because they haven't been in it, because you never really know what you'll do until that time comes. So they can say, I wouldn't stay, I'd leave, and then if it happens, they're still there. So they can't say for sure what they would do in that situation until they get in that situation.
Right.
So you just kind of have to ignore that.
Right. Because that was the thing about me, because as soon as he said that he was going to do something to my kids, that check, I didn't care. Like, I would be there. And it is so funny now that I'm thinking about it, fast forward to 2018, it was the same thing. Because the breaking point with me and my mom is when I finally had talked to her, and I'm like, Mom, why did you you know, put up with that, you know. And I remember I was going to counseling because it was another situation that I ended up in a women's battered shelter. And although it's people there that's for other reasons, like I really wanted to take full advantage of the stuff that they was offering me. And I used to send my mama packets. I used to send her from here. I'll copy it. Whatever I learned, I'll try to, you know, let her know about it. And I asked, I said, Mom, why did you stay in that, you know, in so long or whatever? And she was like, well, do you think I wanted to stay in it like I had kids? And I was like, you know, she wanted it to be so healthy for us, but not knowing that it was unhealthy.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So a lot of people, like you said, when that happened to me, and he said someday he was gonna do something to my kids, I was not going to no shelter. I did not need no help. Like, it was not about me. Like, I'm going to get my kids so they can be safe. Right. So I would not go to a shelter. And I won't report them or none of that, you know?
That's funny you should say that, because as you were talking about, a lot of women stay for the sake of the children because they want them to be healthy, but little do they know the children that are seeing this abuse grow up in that environment and do the exact same thing that you did. You know what I mean? So it's a vicious cycle that you just never go out of until you...
Or they are the abuser.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's so many things that we even think about, like that little Chris Brown situation. When I finally watched both, I knew it was something bigger than what had happened. And it's so crazy, and the way he described it in his thing was like, I didn't want to hit women, but because he was brought up in that kind of household. And it was like, people wouldn't get that. Well, some people did get it and some people don't get it, but it's like he didn't ask to learn how to be an abuser. It's because you're sitting up in that environment and these things just like attached to you. It's just straight just attached to you.
That's what you know.
Well, you have some men who are real slick and sneaky about it. Like, they would abuse their wives when the kids were at school or when the kids weren't around, or they do things and then be like, I don't know what your mother's talking about, or I don't know what your mother was doing. My ex-husband was a prime example of that. He would literally put his hands on me when my kids were not around, just so they could not see what type of monster basically he was. Because he didn't want to look like the bad guy.
That's sad.
It's very sad.
And I know they do that because, but here's the thing, no matter what, and I can contest it, and you probably can too, like no matter what, kids know. Kids know. It's like, and I tried the same thing, and that's another part of being in a domestic situation. You try your best not to let them know. They know. I knew. You know what I mean? Like, you just know.
Kids all, yeah.
So it's all kind of manipulative things that they do to you know, to get around that part. So.
Well, my situation, it was almost 40 years ago. My son was 3, and I was with this guy who at first was very, I mean, he was just fun. He was cute.
Cute.
He was charming. You know, we just had fun and everything was good until we moved in together. And then he got obsessive. It's not that he cut me off from anybody, because I wasn't, you know, like ostracized from any. He didn't take me and just keep me away from my family. None of that. We went out to places. We did this, we did that. My family came over. We went to my family. We went to his family. But it got to where he, I guess it was like jealousy. Because if somebody looked at me, it was a problem. Or if I looked at somebody, it was a real big problem. Or if I was a friend with a guy, because like I used to work at that time at the Naval Air Station in Alameda. And, you know, so you're on the bus, it's a Naval Air Station, there's a lot of folks. And we all caught the same bus going there, so there's people I knew. And so then I would get accused. Or I would get hit. The first time he ever slapped me was, I had a picture of an ex-boyfriend that he had found in my stuff. And so he was, and this guy was in Germany. There's nothing that we could have done. I mean, there was nothing. And he asked me something, and I answered him, and he slapped me so hard, I literally saw stars.
I know. When you told me that, when I saw, I was like,
I mean, it was black, and I saw stars. And my first thought was, I thought that was only on TV, you know, on the cartoons where they show that you see the stars. But actually happened. And then, you know, he had taken my photo albums and cut the pictures out of all the guys. And so I have really very limited pictures from my younger days because he decided to throw them away. But then it got to where if somebody said something, you know, he would punch, or he would wake me up out of my sleep.
Wow.
But he would never hit me in my face, or he'd never hit me where I couldn't cover it up, like my arm or my stomach or my thigh. He never would hit me where anybody could pay attention to it. And I didn't know how to tell my dad, because I knew my dad would kill him. And I didn't want my dad to go to jail. I didn't want to go to jail. So I kind of just like kept it to myself. I didn't tell anybody except for some of my coworkers knew it, because he would come downtown Oakland and get me off the bus going to work. One time in particular, I was so embarrassed because he wanted me to get off the bus, and it's like, why? And so I get off the bus, and then he tries to take my purse so he could look in it. And it's like, what are you doing that for? So I held on to my purse, and he literally drugged me down the street of downtown Oakland with my coworkers on the bus looking at it. My shoes are getting scuffed, my pants are dirty. So I ended up having to catch the bus back home to change my clothes in order to be able to go to work. And he just, when he was finished, he looked at my purse and didn't see, I guess, what he was looking for, threw it down, and he went and got on the bus to go to his job in San Francisco. And it's like, I don't even know what that's for. So it got to a point where my son, I took him to daycare. And coming back, I saw a guy that my son associated with the guy who was in Germany, because they were all in the army. And so after dinner, I could hear him talking to my son, and he was 3 at the time, going on 4, and he mentioned the guy in Germany's name. And so as soon as I heard that, my back stiffened because I was washing dishes. And then I'm sitting there listening, and here he comes into the kitchen. Now, I had a butcher knife in my hand, but again, I was scared to go to jail. So, you know, I had the butcher knife, and he came and he asked me about it. And I said, well, we saw, his name was Johnny. I said, we saw Johnny, not the other person, Bo. I don't care about naming names. His name was Bo. And so he punched me. And I looked down, and my shirt was covered with blood. I have a scar right here under my eye from where he hit me. And then he wouldn't let me out of the kitchen. And he wouldn't let my son into the kitchen. And so I'm sitting there, and finally he let me out, but he wouldn't let me near a mirror. And so, you know, my dad would call me, well, he called my son, every night. And so I'm sitting here on the couch praying that the phone rang. And I'm just praying, and finally it rang, and it was my dad. And so he put my son on the phone, and so then I'm praying, okay, ask to speak to me, because then he can't stop me. And so, you know, my son said, you know, Papa's on the phone, he wants to talk to you. So I go and get on the phone, and my dad and I had a way of communicating where I didn't really have to say much.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so, you know, I answered the phone, got on the phone, and I was answering his question to where he didn't know how I was doing it. And so then my dad said, are you all right? And I said, sure. And he said, do you want me to come there? I said, that would be great. My dad, I lived in Oakland by Lake Merritt. My dad lived in Hayward, which would typically be a 25-minute drive. He got there in 10.
Wow.
And so by that time, when I hung up the phone, my boyfriend at the time, I don't know, I think he went into the bedroom, so I was able to go into the bathroom. And then I saw myself. And then, you know, I had already seen all the blood, but then I saw my face puffy. And when I was still in the bathroom when my dad got there. And so my dad is asking, where am I? And I said, I'm in the back. Because then I was scared to come out.
Okay.
Because I didn't want my dad to see that. Because he would have killed him. I thought my dad was going to kill him. And so you know, he said, Lorna Marlene, if you don't get your ass out this bathroom and get out here right. So I had to come out, and he saw me, and luckily for my boyfriend at that time, his mom had called, so he was on the phone with his mother, because I think my dad would have, he would have hurt him. He may not have killed him, but he would have hurt. He was on the phone with his mother, who heard my dad call him everything but a child of God, and told him, if you ever put your hands on her again, you know, all kinds of stuff. Get your shit and let's go. He grabbed my son, and then his mom wanted to talk to me and asked me, you know, what was going on. So I told her, but then I went back. I went to the hospital the next day, and they put the little butterfly things on there, but then I went back. Because one, that's where all my stuff was. And I went back. I never took my son back there, but I went back, and you know, he promised never to hit me again, which he didn't. But in my mind, it came a time where I had left. I had taken all my stuff out, because he was in the reserves. And so one weekend when he was gone, me and my best friend and my brother got a U-Haul and took all my stuff out. And I still went back. Because I thought I loved him, and, you know, he was sorry, and, you know, and he didn't hit me again. But, you know, it got to a point where he was at reserves one time, and he came home, and he didn't like something. I mean, he would throw the food on the floor, or he would do like little dumb stuff, cut my key so I couldn't get in. I had to wait for him to get home to get in. And this particular day, he came in and he asked me something. And so then I got kind of like a backbone. So I would say what I wanted to say, and he looked like he was going to hit me. And back then, you know, they had the little ashtrays with the cement at the base. So he looked like, and I happened to be by one. You know, neither one of us smoked, but, you know, it was company. And he looked like he was about to hit me, and I picked that thing up and swung, and I broke his hand. And so he said, what did you do that for? I wasn't going to hit you. I said, but you looked like you were, and I wasn't taking that chance. That's when I was done. Because it's like, if I have to do that, then there's no point in really being here. I mean, I think he had spies on me, because he took me to places he should never have known I had even been to. And he would take me to this one guy's house I was talking to. He took me and knocked on his door, because when it's like, why are we coming? How do you know? Are you following me? What? I don't even know how you know about this guy. But, you know, do you know him? Or do you know her? And he said, no. Do you know him? It's like, no. So then I was embarrassed, because like, now you got, okay, so this guy's history. But, you know, it was a matter of, I mean, after the thing, we went to LA and down to Hollywood. I mean, the pictures I have are of me with big glasses and a bruise. But after I hit him, and, you know, it's like, okay, well, I'm kind of done with this. Then I changed. Because my dad always taught me, because I didn't grow up in that kind of environment, and I didn't really see anybody else doing it. You know, my dad and mom owned a restaurant and bar, so every once in a while you'd see a couple get in a fight, but my dad didn't let anything, you know, go that far. So I didn't know, I wasn't used to that. And so I kind of was, one, I was scared, and then two, I just didn't want anybody to go to jail. So, you know, he had told me on more than one occasion, but growing up, my dad always told me that if a man puts his hands on you, he'll take care of it, unless I have slapped that man in his face. Because he's always told me, if you slap a man in his face, then you get what you get, because then you're questioning his manhood. And so I've always lived by that. I've never ever in my life slapped a man in his face, because then I always, you know, I was taught that I deserve what I get after that. But then that's disrespectful anyway. But then you turn around, and after you go through that, and then you see other people, like I've seen my nieces, I've seen my sister, I've seen other people go through it, and I try and tell them, that's not good, or, you know, don't do this, or he's going to do that. And then they don't listen, and then they do it. I should have listened. Well, okay, yeah, you should have, but you know, it's your life. So I can only tell you so much. I can't make you do it. So you can only like try and guide. Like you can't lead. You can lead them to the water, but you can't make them drink. So I mean, sometimes they listen, or sometimes, like it took for my sister to move here with me and be away from that. Her husband, and he didn't ever physically hit her, but he had her self-esteem so low that she didn't think she deserved anybody but him, when she did. But she came here, when I moved back here, she came, so she was away from that for a couple years, and then when she went back, she kind of went back with a clear head. Because then you go back and you see what I've been telling you all along, and what everybody else has been telling you all along, and you see that for yourself. They're still together, but it's a whole totally different situation. So, I mean, you know, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, but I mean, you know, now, if you look like you're gonna hit me, I'm picking up the first thing I see.
Yep, or as my mom used to say, you better pick up that tree out there if that's the closest thing to you.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Seriously.
So, I mean, you know.
So we're gonna take this time. If you guys can go to, especially you with your phones, go to MTN telecommunications page and hit like. So then they could be able to tag you in that, so you can go live.
MTN telecommunications.
Yeah, just put MTN in and it automatically come up. So then we can go live, and then you can share it. And once she'll put you in, then you'll go live. For the people that's listening, like and share, like and share, like and share. If you know somebody that's going through it, share this page and tell them to come in. Right now we are live. We should be. Once you do that, then she'll add you so you can go live on MTN. Lorna, it was interesting that you said it to me, that you said about your dad. You know, like to have that support. When I first got into my first domestic, I literally like hated my parents, because my dad would come. He would be the first one that would come to the scene of the crime after, you know, I was with this guy, I was 17, and, you know, he was already secretly slapping, like we were gonna talk about that too, like he started to slapping, punching, like, and it escalated to like literally, I remember it makes me feel some type of way, because I felt like I was so alone at 16, you know, 17 years old. And I just remember one day I used to always look for somebody to save me in that situation, and I was dating this guy. And so he had already been abusing me or whatever. And I remember me and him was outside talking. I put that on Facebook today. You know, I'm just being like, okay, if he do come, somebody gonna whoop him, because he been whooping on me. So I'm looking, you know, I'm talking to this guy, and we smiling and hugging and stuff. And I'm like, oh, so when we hugged, I see him coming, you know, towards us. So I'm like, you know, okay, now I'm about to finally see a man, you know, whoop on him. And so, long story short, he ended up coming, and like he literally like grabbed me by my hair, and like first thing he did was punch me. And when he punched me, like it knocked me to the ground, because like, you know what I'm saying?
Who punched you?
The guy. And I'm 17.
Oh, okay.
But I'm standing with another black man, you know, thinking.
Right.
When he come, like, I'm like, he on his way. So I'm thinking, like, you know, give him heads up, like he gonna beat him up. And this the guy I was telling y'all about, the 17-year-old. And he like literally, he punched me in my face, knocked me to my knees, pulled my hair, was calling me bees and hoes and all this stuff. And then he kicked me in my stomach as I'm crawling. And here's the thing about it. I was so in love with this guy, but I remember the thing about what you said about your dad. I remember when it happened, eventually it ended up that I had to drink out of a straw. Because when he hit my mouth, he like detached my lip, busted. I needed stitches. So I had to like literally drink like this and sip out of a straw. But the thing about it to me was like, I was so furious because the first person that showed up was my dad. And back then, because I wasn't knowledgeable, I felt some type of way, because I'm like, how can I call on you to save me when I see you do the same thing to my mom? So, you know, how could you be the person that's gonna get me out this situation? So that was another reason why I didn't come out and be like, because I had nobody to be like, this is wrong.
So what did your dad do though?
So yeah, he had a shotgun in his trunk. I mean, he did all that stuff, but for me, it was like, I would rather be with him, because I'm like, you do the same thing. So how could you come and try to want to kill him, And you do it to my mom. And I remember when we went to the police station, the ambulance, you know, my mom and then went to the police station so they can call the ambulance. And I was just like, I remember cussing my dad out. Like, how you gonna come up here and be like, you know, he's like, this don't make no sense. You know, a father. And I think it was the father's love. But when he was saying that to me, I'm like, how could you say that to me? You do the same thing to mom. Like, don't arrest him. I didn't want the police, you know, I didn't want them to put, because they eventually brought him in handcuffs. And I'm like, don't do anything to him, because nobody's doing nothing to you while you doing it to my mom. But you're the first one on the scene when somebody does it to me.
Because you're his baby.
Right. But he's doing it to the person that had the baby. You
Right.
get what I'm saying?
I
That's
get
how
that.
you think at 17. Yeah, I know you get it, but it's like, that's how you think. Like what part do you come in
I have
at?
a question. Whatever happened? What was the guy? What did he do?
What do you mean?
The guy that you were with?
What did he do as far as
The
what?
guy
You
that was
said
standing
that
there.
was standing there with you.
Oh, he did nothing. Oh, so this was, and I wanted to say that too. He was just like, oh man, you wrong, you wrong, you wrong. And he kept saying that, but in my mind, I'm like, hey, if you don't get, you know, if you don't get this gorilla up off of me, because it's like, hands down, he was strong. He was like, this probably the strongest man I ever knew in my life. But the thing about it is, like, he stood there and he watched, and everybody in the whole community was like, he was known to be crazy, pretty much, excuse me. So the man didn't mess with him. He abused animals. I'm like, he was known in this community as the guy. So nobody really, you know, really ever bucked up against him because of the consequences. So he was the bad person. But I just remember, like, man, like, ain't no, you know, and I, like, the guy was just standing there, and he basically, I actually inboxed him today because I was like, I wanted to remember if he remembered that day. Because in my mind, I just could remember, like, oh, well, you wasn't even worth it.
So you're friends with him on Facebook?
Yeah, he's on Facebook right now. Not the guy that abused me, the guy that was there and
That you
stood
was
there
there.
and watched.
Oh.
He's actually, let me tell you, he actually died a brutal death. You know, you don't wish that on nobody, but he did. It was a horrible death that happened to him. And it's like, but to me now, the forgiveness part, like, I had to understand what happened to him. For him to be as
Right.
ruthless. He was very ruthless as he was. But not even just that, like, how did I get to, you know, be with this person? So.
Well, unfortunately, I think, and this is my opinion, I know back when I was little, there was a thing where, you know, men didn't get in other men's business.
Yes. Yeah.
And so, you know, somebody could be watching somebody just like jacking anybody up, and they're not going to step in because that's that man's business.
Yep, that's that man's business.
And it's like that today. It's, you know, nobody wants to step in, but now that we have cell phones, everybody wants to film it.
Yeah.
But
still won't do
nobody's
anything.
doing anything to stop it.
You're absolutely right. No, I was going to just say, I did talk to a guy, and we were talking about a situation where he actually knew a girl, and he said this. He said, I will never do that again. He said, I've seen so many times where a woman has gotten beat, and he's jumped in, but they will defend him. They will defend the one that they're with and be like, no, why would you do that? And he said at that point, he said, I will not defend a woman again. And it's the same thing. He said, if it's their business, it's their business. He said, I'm not going to tape it. Just like you said, I'm not going to tape it. I'm not going to do any of that, but I'm not going to get in their business.
Well, for me though, I mean, because I've had a niece, I still have the niece, but back when she was younger, she would be in a relationship, and my nephews would, soon as they got into a fight or he hit her or they were fighting, my nephews would be the first ones there to whoop his butt or to do whatever, and then she'd go to jail right along with him because then she's fighting the police for trying to take
Him to
jail. So then she ends up going to jail too. And it's like, so it got to where they had said, well, I'm not doing that anymore because, you know, she just goes right back. And it's like, well, you can't, all I can do is, for me, and you know, like I say, I'll pick up something. But if I see that, I'm not going to let you do that in front of me. Now, if you go somewhere else and I'm not around, I can't watch that. I can't watch, and it's vice versa, because some women beat a man because they know that man's been raised and they won't hit you back. So then I think they take advantage of that because you know, you know he's not going to hit you back, so then you want to sit there and punk him in front of his friends or his family or even perfect strangers because you know he's not going to hit you. Well, that's not right either.
No, it's not.
So
And you
I
better
can't
hope
watch
one day
it.
he don't snap and decide to do, because I've heard that happen too.
Yeah.
Like one day he's like, oh, you want to keep verbally abusing me? Let me show you. It's one of those things where it's like you're asking for it. Just like you said with the one, you know, if your dad telling you if you slap him, just be prepared. Some people don't take even the verbal abuse. That can be just as worse as physical abuse.
Right.
So,
Right.
And it's so crazy that you said that because I remember watching my dad when he used to beat my mom, like in the neighbors, they would be out there. And I just remember as a
watching.
little girl just watching. And I used to be like, help my mom, you know, running and screaming. And they be like, and the same thing is so crazy that I was just thinking about that he'd be like, oh, you wrong, oh, you wrong. That was the only thing that you could hear them saying in the background. Like, no, y'all whoop. This whoop his butt. Like, this is my dad, but whoop her, you know? And I remember one time my mom and them was arguing about some keys, and everybody was outside. And I know, like I said, everybody know what I'm saying is true from my community. And like, they dad, like, watched my dad, like, choke my mom out. When he released her, she was on the ground. Like, he choked her, like, I guess today you'll call it put it to sleep. But I mean, all these full-grown men are standing out here.
Did you have brothers?
I had a brother, but here's the thing, my brother he's gay right now, but I don't think that I think he was more of a mama's boy. So because initially, when I turned 16, because I was in the street, so I was in the gang, I thought I was the toughest thing running Chicago Heights. And we all thought that we was gonna jump on my dad. So this is, at the time, because I was the oldest, every night that they got into it, they would run into my room and be like, because they looked up to me because they thought I was just the biggest, baddest, could kick everybody butt as we got older. But just as kids, when they would fight, I would grab them together. You know, it's just messed up. Like a little kid, you grab them together, you put them in the room, and you're going to be okay. And, you know, you watching this, but you become this protector of your brothers and sisters. But I remember we all got together, and we thought it was a bright idea. If my dad hit my mom again, I had to be about probably 15, but I was big enough. I had, you know, a couple of war things up under my belt, so I thought it was the biggest, bad thing. So I'm gonna whoop my dad. We gonna whoop him. I said, I'm gonna initially start it, and y'all, I got him. And it was like a massacre up in there. Because when I jumped my dad, because he was beating my mom, it was the last time. I had so much courage, and I'm like,
that has to be tough.
That would be tough.
It would
tough.
definitely
That
be tough
is.
to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Man and all
Yeah.
and I wasn't gonna even cry about this, but I just
No.
remember because you asked me about my brother, and it's like we tried so bad to whoop him,
Yeah.
and I really thought that I could, but he has so much strength that he just like he ended up breaking my finger. He ended up hitting me in the face with a cane because I was literally like picking up. I tore my mom's house up because I was like, I'm whooping him. You know what I'm saying? Because I'm tired of him whooping my mom, and I had been, you know, and I had this kind of courage, and I just remember, like, my brother, like, he was tossing us, like, we was just, like,
Like ragged
you know,
out.
all over the place, but it's like, we tried.
Yeah.
And then the thing about it, and I was so angry as a kid because, like you said, family don't get involved with it because I can understand why, because if you end up killing him or anything, you're going to jail, and that person is still with him.
Yeah.
And that was the thing about it. My mom had so many cousins and uncles, and you think about, like, why didn't they come over there? Because why would you?
Why would you?
Because
She's going to back up.
you letting them back in.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And I was telling the people earlier, and I was like, when you're in a domestic situation, I remember my dad used to go to jail, and they would call the police on him, and he'll be gone after he whooped her or whatever. And the next day, they would wake up like nothing happened. Like they was like lovey-dovey. So people eventually they remove themselves
Yeah, that does happen.
from the situation. And that's the thing about I thought about and going further into it. When you remove yourself from that person, we have to become aware that you cannot leave that person by themselves.
Yeah.
Because first thing, it goes with the warning sign. The warning sign is that they isolate you. And what they did was isolated my mom because she would always go back. So it's like you live in this hole, and you basically just create your own little, life. Like you said, when you be hoping somebody call. And I remember me being in my domestic situation, like, I hope the phone ring, I hope the phone ring, I hope the phone ring. And because that's your only way of getting out, because they put you in this room and you are like terrified. You don't know if you're gonna to make it out or not, because that's how intense it is while you're in there.
Right. I know. When I was sitting there, waiting for the phone, because he called every night, and in my mind, I'm thinking, now this is going to be the one night that he
don't
says,
call,
"Oh, they're good," and not bother to call. And so, telepathically, somehow, I don't know, but he did end up calling, because it's like it would be my luck that today's the day he doesn't call to check up on. Because he wasn't really checking up on me. He was checking up on my son. I was his first grandchild, and he was his world. So, but it turns out that he did, and so we got that, and my dad was not a small guy, so most people were scared. I've seen my dad slap a man and bust his face wide open, open-handed, and chase him 3 blocks because, it was New Year's Eve, and the guy got mad at whoever he was talking to on the pay phone, I think his girlfriend, and he took the phone and broke the front window of the door and ran, and my dad chased him, and of course, nobody was gonna mess with my dad, so me and my son's father and my sister ran after him. I don't know where my dad went, but it was like 2 blocks down, and my dad had already caught him. Apparently he had went through this way and jumped the fence and caught this guy. By the time we get there, the police are there, and the man's face is just like hanging wide open, and the police officer said, "Oh, he just slapped him." It's like, so then most of my boyfriends were terrified of my dad. So, but I mean that's a good thing.
Yeah.
So, but I went through it. I'm so sorry that you went through that.
Yeah, it was terrible.
Because my experience was nowhere near
it
that
was like
extreme.
multiple.
But
and that's the thing about people that people don't get it. You got to have, I thank God for Minnesota. I know people always have their little stuff about what they say about Chicago people and come from Minnesota. I always put us in this thing, like the people that came in the 90s, we was coming to search for an outlet to be better. And I just remember all these resources that we got to fix ourselves, but we was hungry enough to do so. We wasn't coming out here to party. We wasn't coming out here to gang bang. We wasn't coming out here. We was coming out here like for a new beginning. You know what I'm saying? So it was all those classes, and I just remember like after I left the shelter or whatever, I remember that I started to just get involved. Like I wanted to go to the shelter because I'm like, it's so misunderstood about people being in domestics versus they don't know how they got into the domestic, situation. So I know that we had a couple of warning signs that Amika had that,
Okay, so I'll just do my quick little, I only found a few statistics. 35% more of black women are victims over white women. I thought, I didn't write all of it down, but it was pretty much saying because of our living environments, we're more prone to being victimized than they are. 35% of women worldwide have experienced some type of, whether it was physical or sexual abuse. 20 people every minute, it didn't say boy or girl, 20 people every minute is abused by a partner. So every minute,
somebody's getting abused.
Yep, something. 1 in 3 of women and 1 in 4 of men have been victims. So it does happen to men as well, just not as often. And earlier, like you had said, the age range of the battery most commonly happens between 18 and 24 is when the abusers really catch those women at that age range. And 19% of domestic violence involves a weapon. So that's what I found on the internet for statistics. Some of the warning signs to look for, like you were saying earlier, jealousy, isolation, the hypersensitives, like where they're sensitive, like you can't say nothing without them taking it the wrong way.
right,
The controlling behaviors, blaming that other person for their problems. Let me see, the verbal abuse. In the bedroom, they're a little aggressive. I'll just leave it at that.
A little aggressive.
Threats of violence, like how you were saying before, how he threatened to kill himself or hurt the children.
Right.
You know how a person may knock stuff over, break a window, that kind of thing. Those are warning signs. Even when you're arguing, if they start doing that kind of stuff, it's that now, but you're right, next is going to be you or something else.
Right.
Using force during arguments. And that's what I was thinking about earlier when you guys were talking. My first boyfriend, so you don't ever have a boyfriend, right? When you get one, it's different. You put up with a lot more with this one than you would probably any other ones. And this particular guy, he was, I went right for the ghetto for this one. I mean, literally, because my parents didn't drink, they didn't smoke, they didn't party. So what did I do? I wanted to drink or smoke
and party. Right.
So I went right to what I knew that they were not going to approve of. And he sure did. Whenever he would get mad with his parents, not only would he fight his father, he would push his mom. And so my mother always told us, if the way a man treats his mother is the way he'll treat you.
Yes.
Sure enough, I would see him fight with his parents, and I would be like, because I wasn't raised around that kind of thing. And sure enough, eventually, then he was in my face and bump chesting me and talking down to me and doing that. He never hit me, but it was still enough that I was like, yep, this has got to come to an end. Because he scared me at that point now, and I didn't want to live in fear, so I had to end that relationship. And I got my first boyfriend at 17. And it was funny because of what you guys were saying about women. I think because when we were little too, our parents would fight. And you would hear them. I wouldn't see them, but you would hear them. And my mom would always come in the room to us. And you would see that, the physical marks on hers. And she would always say to us, whatever you do, if you start letting a man hit you now, they'll always hit you. You have to stand up for yourself. Even though they'll win, you have to stand up for yourself. And just as a little girl, seeing and hearing that, I think that as I grew up and I recognized my boyfriend, when he did that, I thought, okay, I have to leave this guy alone. But then at the same time, it clicked to me like, you wimped out. How come you didn't stand up to yourself, to this guy? How come you didn't do this? So then after that relationship ended. Every relationship after that, I was the aggressor. I wouldn't hit them, but I would almost try to provoke them to hit me so that we could fight. And it wasn't like I was trying to punk them, but I just felt like, I'm not letting you talk to me that way. You're not going to get in my face. That's, you want to go? That's how I was. And I was like that for a long time until I ran into a guy, my ex-husband. And I did that, and he was 6'7", and I'm 5'2". And I remember, he was sitting there, and I mushed him. And he pushed me so freaking hard. I thought then, yep, okay. I got his face. Yep. I didn't touch another man after that. I didn't put my hands on them. I didn't get in their face. I didn't do none of that stuff because I thought, okay, yep, they're stronger. I'm not going to go down that road with them.
And it's so crazy about how people just think that it's like like from where we're from, like everybody, what they say, whoop ASS and take names. Like all the men, like that was a common thing to do back in the, back in our era. Like that was, nobody could say you need to run or, this, like everybody, because it was happening in everybody's household.
Right.
Well, I know my friend, and she's still my best friend to this day, she would get mad at me because I wouldn't leave. And my brother would get mad at me because I wouldn't leave. And then when I was gone, they really got mad when I went back. So they kept trying, but it's like, okay, I hear what you're saying. But this another, and then as now that we're talking about this, then it just brought up another memory where I guess that could be considered emotional abuse, because the same guy used to take me to the clinic for tests, and so the first time it's like, what are you doing? I just.
You had to check it.
Yeah, and it's like,
oh my gosh, he was
for a disease.
I was gonna say,
no, not that kind of test.
You want to be like,
and so it's like my first time, and then I was too scared to say anything because it's like, why are you bringing me here? So it's like, okay, I know that there's nothing, so maybe he's thinking that somewhere I'm cheating with somebody, and so he's gonna. We did this like 4 times, and he would never tell me why we were doing it because he got tested too. And he never would explain to me why we were doing it. And then years later, after I had my daughter, Now she was a baby, and I don't know how we connect. I think he called me or somehow we reconnected, and he wanted me to bring her over so he could see her, and it's like, okay. And so while we're there, I mean, and she's a baby, and he said, so is she okay? I said, yeah. She said, why wouldn't she be okay? Yeah, look at her. She's fine. She was a healthy 10-pound, 11-ounce baby, 22 inches long. So she came out 3 months big. So, I mean, she was healthy. And while I'm standing there, and, and I'm holding her, and he tells me that he thought I had herpes. And it's like, what are you talking about? And he said, so you don't have. I was like, no. And then it clicked. I said, is that why we had to go get tested all those times? Because you thought I had herpes?
Oh, wow.
I said, do you?
Right. I was going to say, it must have been him.
Right.
He was probably
He
messing
did.
around. Yep, he was messing around.
But it happened before we even met.
Yep.
But I guess it didn't come out until we were together. And so I don't know if he was taking me to make sure I didn't have it.
And
Or to blame you for it.
Or to blame you for it.
No.
Oh.
No, because he had it before.
Oh, okay.
But I didn't know
He
that.
knew you had it.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
And so it's like, oh. And I almost dropped her because it's like, why wouldn't you tell me that?
Right.
Why wouldn't you give me that option to say, ooh, no,
I'm not doing it.
No, we're closed here now. Instead of, putting me, thinking I had done something wrong.
Right.
Taking me for these tests, and all the while it was you, and then you wait till I have my child to tell me.
Right.
That's like,
Glad it wasn't something more detrimental. Yeah.
I think really abusers, they are psychologically it's
disturbed.
something. Yeah, it's a lot going on.
Yeah.
We got to pretty much wrap up.
Yeah.
I did. No, we because we got 4 weeks to they want to kind of wrap up at 55.
So what I do want to do is I just want to do a did you know. So I was talking to them about the domestic violence, and there is October is designated as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It derived in October 1981, and it's called the Day of Unity. It actually went on for an entire week. And so basically the activities conducted were as varied and diverse as the program sponsors, but had common themes. So mourning those that have died because of domestic violence, celebrating those who survived, and connecting with those to work to end violence. So that's something that you still can be a part of. In October 1987, the first Domestic Violence Awareness Month was observed. And then in 1989, the U.S. Congress did pass a public law designating October as the year of that year as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
And we have next week we'll have some guests on that's coming on. It's gonna be, oh Lord, we definitely gonna need some tissue next week. But it's a mother-daughter combo. They'll be on the show.
Okay.
And they kind of got the same when she was telling me about the history of she was in a domestic situation. Then her daughter got out and was in a domestic situation. Then she wanted to save her daughter, but it was the same thing of like, how could you save me when you was in it and all that. Yeah. So that's gonna be interesting. I think Amika has some information for those who are don't have anyone to talk to. You can all go into our inboxes. I'm pretty sure we're open to help you get to where you need to be. We're open to talk to you. If you don't have to go through this alone, you can go in my messenger. You can email us at the 4 opinions, the number 4.com. No, at gmail.com. You can go in there. We could just try our best to walk through this process with you. You see, we made it. Me and Miss Lorna.
Because they
which
can
is
always
awesome.
contact me.
Some people don't make it out, so that's awesome.
And Amika has a hotline that you can call.
Yep, the National Domestic Violence Hotline in the United States is 1-800-799-7233. That is 1-800-799-7233.
And it's safe.
Yep, it can be safe. And like I said, I truly do stand behind the state of Minnesota, that they do have a lot of things that if you want the help, if you're not going there for anything else, from homelessness or need a break from your addiction and all that stuff, they have places that will really, that place helped me out so much. You get counseling, you get you get therapy, you get lessons that you could take home. So we're gonna encourage everybody to look it up on the website, domestic violence. You can Google it. They got all kind of resources. You got the number. If you could say that one more time for me, Amika.
1-800-799-7233.
Yep. So tune in. I think we'll be next Thursday, 7 o'clock, sir. Next Thursday, 7 o'clock. We'll be going live again. I want to thank you, Ms. Lorna, for sharing your story with us.
Yes.
I know, and we'll see y'all next week.
All right.
All right. Good night.
Have a good night.
All right.
He said.
Ooh.